Welcome back to Legends and Lore, the podcast where we explore the strange, the unexplained, and the stories that keep us staring at the stars, or in this case, the sky over Phoenix. I'm your host, David Culpepper, and tonight we're diving into one of the most famous and widely witnessed UFO incidents in modern history, the Phoenix Lights. On the evening of March 13th, 1997, thousands of people across Arizona, Nevada, and even parts of Mexico looked to the skies and saw something they couldn't explain. A series of lights, some in a massive V-shaped formation, appeared silently, gliding across the night sky. Witnesses described it as awe-inspiring, eerie, and in some cases, downright terrifying. This wasn't just a fleeting moment, it was an event that lasted for hours and left a trail of unanswered questions. But what makes the Phoenix Lights so unique isn't just the sheer number of people who saw them, or even the strange, silent craft they described. It's the enduring mystery of what really happened that night. Were these lights evidence of extraterrestrial visitors, classified military operation, or something entirely different? Decades later, we still don't have definitive answers, and maybe that's what makes this story so compelling. It's a moment frozen in time, a glimpse into the unknown that continues to captivate and divide. Think about it. When thousands of people from all walks of life, police officers, pilots, doctors, kids, you name it, describe seeing the same thing, how do we make sense of that? Can so many people be wrong, or is there something larger at play here? Something we can't quite understand? Over the next hour or so, we're going to break down every aspect of the Phoenix Lights, and we'll explore the timeline of the sightings, hear vivid eyewitness accounts, and dive into the theories, some grounded, others out of this world. We'll also examine the government's response and how this event became one of the defining moments in UFO history. Whether you're a skeptic, a believer, or somewhere in between, I invite you to come along as we unravel one of the greatest mysteries of the modern age. So dim the lights, settle in, and keep your eyes on the skies. This is going to be a story you won't forget. Welcome to Legends and Lore. March 13th, 1997 was an ordinary evening for most people in the Southwest. A clear, cool night with stars dotting the vast sky. But as the sun dipped below the horizon, something extraordinary began to unfold. By the end of the night, thousands of people across Nevada, Arizona, and even parts of Mexico would be left questioning everything they thought they knew about the skies above. The first sightings came around 7:30 p.m. in Henderson, Nevada, just outside of Las Vegas. A man walking outside described seeing a massive V-shaped craft moving silently across the sky. He said it was enormous, nearly the size of a football field, and had 6 bright lights along its leading edge. What struck him most, though, was the silence. For something so large, you'd expect noise, the roar of engines, the whoosh of air displacement. But there was nothing, just an eerie, unnatural quiet. From Henderson, the lights continued southeast, making their way across the Arizona border and toward the town of Paulden. Around 8:15 p.m., more witnesses began to report strange bright lights in the sky. One resident described the lights as softly glowing orbs, moving together in a perfect V formation. In Prescott Valley, about 90 miles north of Phoenix, several people reported seeing the same formation. They described a massive craft that seemed to hover for a moment before gliding slowly and deliberately across the night sky. Again, the silence was a defining feature. No hum, no roar, just the faint rustle of the wind. As the lights approached Phoenix between 8:30 and 9:30 p.m., the event shifted from isolated sightings to a mass phenomenon. This was no longer a few people catching a glimpse of something strange. This was hundreds, maybe thousands of witnesses all seeing the same thing. Imagine stepping out onto your driveway, looking up, and seeing a V-shaped craft so large it seems to blot out the stars. Witnesses described it as enormous, up to a mile wide, some said, with a metallic surface that reflected the city lights below. Others described it as almost translucent, like a shadow moving across the heavens. One witness, a retired Air Force pilot, described the craft as unlike anything he'd ever seen, saying, "It was otherworldly. This wasn't one of ours." Another described how the lights seemed to glide overhead, as if the craft was observing the city. And then there were the children who ran into their homes, shouting for their parents to come outside and look, their voices filled with a mix of excitement and fear. This wasn't just a single perspective. It was a tapestry of experiences, each adding to the enigma of the Phoenix Lights. But not everyone agreed on what they were seeing, and while many believed the craft was extraterrestrial, others thought it might be a secret military operation. After all, Arizona is home to Luke Air Force Base, and the Southwest is no stranger to experimental aircraft. Could this be a classified project, a test of some new stealth technology? For some witnesses, the sheer size of the craft and its silent, gliding motion made that explanation seem just as unlikely as aliens. By the time the lights reached the Sonoran Desert later that evening, they seemed to disappear, fading into the inky blackness of the desert night. But the event left a lasting impression on those who witnessed it. News stations began receiving calls almost immediately, with people describing what they had seen. Skeptics, believers, and everyone in between were suddenly united by a single burning question. What was it? The Phoenix Lights weren't just a UFO sighting, they were a shared experience that transcended backgrounds and beliefs. From the clear skies of Henderson to the bustling streets of Phoenix, the event left thousands of people questioning what they had seen and what it meant. And as we explore the theories and explanations, we'll find that this wasn't just an event. It was the beginning of a mystery that endures to this day. When it comes to the Phoenix Lights, and the most intriguing part of the story isn't just what people saw, it's what they think they saw. Over the years, countless theories have been put forward to explain the mysterious lights that crossed the skies that night. Some are grounded in science, others in skepticism, and still others in the belief that what people witnessed wasn't of this earth. Let's take a closer look at the possibilities. Let's start with the theory that's captured the imaginations of so many, that the Phoenix Lights were evidence of extraterrestrial visitors. For many witnesses, the sheer scale and behavior of the craft defied earthly explanation. The V-shaped formation, described as spanning up to a mile wide, moved silently and seemed to glide effortlessly across the sky. Some witnesses even reported feeling an overwhelming sense of awe, as if they were in the presence of something far beyond human understanding. Think about it. Craft of that size, moving that way without making a sound. If it wasn't from this world, what kind of technology would it take to make it possible? That's the question believers keep coming back to. And this isn't an isolated incident. Similar sightings have been reported all over the world, from the triangular UFOs seen over Belgium in the 1990s to the Hudson Valley sightings in New York during the 1980s. In each case, witnesses described massive, silent crafts with unusual light patterns, adding weight to the idea that these events are connected. For those who believe in the UFO hypothesis, the Phoenix Lights are more than just another sighting. They're a turning point. This wasn't one or two people seeing a strange light in the sky. This was thousands of witnesses across multiple states, all describing something extraordinary. For believers, it's hard to dismiss that kind of consensus. Of course, not everyone is ready to point to the stars for answers. Another popular theory is that the lights were part of a classified military operation. Arizona is home to several military installations, including Luke Air Force Base, and the Southwest has long been a hotbed for experimental aircraft testing. Could the lights have been a new kind of stealth technology or an advanced surveillance craft? It's not as far-fetched as it sounds. In fact, the U.S. Air Force eventually offered an explanation for at least part of the event. According to their official statement, the lights seen over Phoenix around 10 p.m. were flares dropped by A-10 Warthogs during a training exercise at the Barry Goldwater Range. These flares, they said, would explain the stationary lights that many witnesses saw lingering in the sky. And while it's true that military flares can hang in the air for a while, gradually drifting as they burn out, the explanation left many people unsatisfied. For one thing, flares don't move in a V formation, and they certainly don't glide silently over cities. And then there's the question of timing. The Air Force explanation only accounts for the later sightings, not the massive craft seen earlier in the evening. It's almost as if the official story was designed to address part of the mystery while leaving the rest unanswered, a strategy that predictably only fueled more conspiracy theories. Then there's the possibility that what people saw wasn't a craft or military operation, but a natural phenomenon. Some skeptics have suggested that the lights could have been meteors breaking apart as they entered Earth's atmosphere, creating a dazzling display that appeared to move in formation. Others have proposed optical illusions like reflections of city lights bouncing off atmospheric layers, creating the illusion of a large structured craft. But here's the thing. Meteors don't typically glide silently for extended periods of time, and they certainly don't appear to hover. And while optical illusions can explain some strange sightings, they're a harder sell when you're dealing with so many consistent accounts describing the same object. Natural explanations like these might work for a few isolated cases, but they fall short when it comes to the scale and consistency of the Phoenix lights. Finally, we have to consider the possibility that not everything reported that night was as it seemed. In any high-profile event like this, there's always a chance that some sightings were exaggerated, misinterpreted, or even fabricated. It's possible that people who didn't see the lights firsthand felt compelled to share stories after hearing about the event, unintentionally muddying the waters with second-hand accounts. And let's face it, once the media got involved, the story took on a life of its own. But here's the tricky part. Even if some reports were exaggerated or false, it doesn't explain the core of what happened. The thousands of credible witnesses, the detailed descriptions, the sheer consistency of the accounts, those are harder to dismiss. And that's what makes the Phoenix Lights such a compelling mystery. It's not just about the lights themselves, it's about the layers of perception, belief, and skepticism that surround them. So, what were the Phoenix Lights? A visitor from another world, a classified military project, or something else entirely? Each theory leaves us with as many questions as answers, and perhaps that's why this event has endured for so long. But there's more to this story than just theories. There's the way it changed the people who witnessed it and the lasting impact it's had on UFO culture. And that's where we're headed next. The Phoenix Lights weren't just lights in the sky. They were a deeply personal experience for the thousands of people who saw them. For some, the event was awe-inspiring, almost spiritual. For others, it was unsettling, a moment that shook their sense of reality. And for a few, it became a turning point, an encounter that changed the way they viewed the world and their place in it. Let's start with the emotional impact. Many witnesses described an overwhelming sense of wonder as they watched the lights glide silently overhead. One woman in Prescott recalled standing in her backyard with her family, staring at the V-shaped formation as it moved across the sky. She said it felt like time stopped, like the entire world had gone quiet except for this incredible, unexplainable thing in the heavens. For her, it wasn't just a sighting. It was a moment of pure, unfiltered awe. But not everyone felt that way. For others, the lights were terrifying. Imagine standing on your porch and seeing a craft so massive it seems to block out the stars, moving silently like it's watching you. One man in Phoenix described feeling an intense sense of vulnerability, as if he was being observed by something far beyond his understanding. And he wasn't alone. Several witnesses reported similar feelings of unease, even fear, as they watched the lights pass overhead. It's one thing to read about UFOs or watch them in movies, but seeing something like that in real life, that's a whole different story. For many people, the Phoenix lights were more than just a strange event. They were a catalyst for deeper questions. What if we're not alone? What if there's more to the universe than we can see or understand? For some witnesses, that night marked the beginning of a lifelong fascination with UFOs and extraterrestrial life. People who had never thought about the possibility of life beyond Earth suddenly found themselves devouring books, watching documentaries, and even attending UFO conventions. The lights didn't just change what they believed, and they changed how they lived. And then there were the skeptics who became believers. Take Bill Greiner, for example, a truck driver who witnessed the lights while making a delivery that night. Greiner had never given UFOs much thought before, but what he saw that evening left him convinced that the lights were not of this earth. He described the craft as so massive, so silent, and so otherworldly that he couldn't dismiss it as anything man-made. For him, it was a turning point, a moment that shattered his skepticism and left him questioning everything. One of the most fascinating aspects of the Phoenix Lights story is the involvement of public figures, particularly former Arizona Governor Fife Symington. When the lights first made headlines, Symington held a press conference where he famously brought out an aide dressed in an alien costume, joking that they had captured the culprit. At the time, his lighthearted approach seemed to mock the event, dismissing it as much ado about nothing. But years later, Symington admitted something surprising. He had seen the lights himself that night, and he believed they were extraterrestrial in origin. Symington described the craft as massive, otherworldly, and unlike anything he had ever seen. He later said that he downplayed the event at the time to avoid public panic, but privately he was as baffled as everyone else. His admission added a layer of credibility to the UFO hypothesis and reignited interest in the Phoenix Lights, proving that even those in positions of power weren't immune to the mystery of that night. The Phoenix Lights didn't just light up the sky, they left a lasting imprint on the people who saw them, whether it was a sense of wonder, fear, or newfound belief. The event touched something deep and universal in all of us. It's a reminder of how the unknown can inspire, unsettle, and transform us, often all at once. The Phoenix Lights didn't just capture the attention of witnesses that night. They sparked a wave of curiosity, debate, and investigation that rippled through local newsrooms, government offices, and UFO communities across the country. What began as a strange night in the skies of Arizona quickly snowballed into one of the most talked about UFO sightings in history. And as with any great mystery, the way it was investigated, or in some cases ignored, only added to the controversy. Let's start with how the story broke. On the night of March 13th, 1997, local news stations in Arizona were inundated with calls from people reporting strange lights in the sky. At first, the tone of the coverage was cautious. News anchors described the lights as an unusual phenomenon, careful not to jump to conclusions. But as the number of calls grew and the descriptions became more consistent, it was clear that something extraordinary had happened. By the next morning, the Phoenix lights were the talk of the town and the state. Local news outlets ran with the story, interviewing witnesses and airing shaky footage of the lights, and the video clips were grainy, but they showed enough to pique the public's curiosity. A series of glowing orbs in a V-shaped formation, moving slowly and silently across the night sky. Within days, the story spread to national outlets, with networks like CNN picking it up. Suddenly, what had been a local mystery was now a nationwide conversation. And as the media coverage grew, so did the speculation. It didn't take long for late-night comedians to weigh in either. Jay Leno joked about alien tourists checking out spring training in Arizona, while skeptics dismissed the lights as overactive imaginations or worse, attention-seeking hoaxes. But for those who had seen the lights, the jokes didn't land. This wasn't a punchline. It was something real, something they couldn't explain. As the media frenzy grew, people began demanding answers. And when you have unexplained lights in the sky, all eyes tend to turn towards the government. Initially, officials had little to say about the Phoenix lights, which only fueled the speculation. It wasn't until months later, after pressure from the public and the media, that the U.S. Air Force finally issued an official explanation. According to their statement, the lights seen over Phoenix around 10 p.m. were flares dropped during a training exercise at the Barry Goldwater Range. Now, on the surface, this explanation might seem plausible. Military flares can hover in the air for several minutes, creating a glowing effect as they drift and burn out. But for many witnesses, this explanation raised more questions than it answered. First, the Air Force's timeline didn't match up with earlier sightings of the V-shaped craft moving across the state. And second, flares don't move in formation, and they certainly don't glide silently over cities. It felt like the Air Force was only addressing part of the story, leaving the most compelling accounts unexplained. It's almost like telling someone who saw a tiger in their backyard, "Oh, don't worry, it was just a house cat, a very large, silent, V-shaped house cat." Understandably, a lot of people weren't buying it. While the government's explanation fell flat for many, independent investigators wasted no time diving into the mystery. UFO researchers descended on Phoenix, interviewing witnesses, analyzing footage, and collecting as much data as they could. Organizations like MUFON, the Mutual UFO Network, became heavily involved, cataloging reports and looking for patterns. They noted the consistency in witness accounts, particularly the size, shape, and behavior of the craft. For UFO enthusiasts, this was one of the most compelling cases they'd ever encountered. But it wasn't just believers who took an interest. Skeptics and scientists also weighed in, offering their own theories. Some proposed that the lights were simply airplanes flying in formation, while others suggested atmospheric phenomena like reflections or even meteors. While these explanations satisfied some, they did little to address the sheer number of witnesses who described a massive, structured craft blocking out the stars. The more investigators dug, the more elusive the truth became. And then there's the issue of secrecy. If there's one thing that fuels UFO conspiracy theories, it's the government's penchant for keeping things under wraps. The Southwest is home to numerous military installations, including some that are known for testing experimental aircraft, Combine that with decades of classified project, from stealth bombers to drones, and you have the perfect recipe for suspicion. Think about it. When the U-2 spy plane was being developed in the 1950s, even commercial pilots flying at high altitudes didn't know what they were seeing. Decades later, stealth technology was still shrouded in secrecy, leading to countless UFO reports. So, is it any wonder that people look at the Phoenix Lights and think, what aren't they telling us? Whether or not the lights were connected to a military project, the lack of transparency only made the mystery deeper. In the end, the investigations into the Phoenix Lights left us with more questions than answers. Was it flares? A classified military craft? Something extraterrestrial? Or perhaps a combination of all three? The truth, whatever it is, remains just out of reach. But one thing is certain. The way this event was handled by the media, the government, and independent investigators has cemented it as one of the most enduring and controversial UFO sightings in history. The Phoenix Lights have become more than just a mystery. They've become a cultural touchstone. Decades later, people are still talking about that night, not just in UFO circles, but in broader conversations about the unknown. This isn't just a case of, did it happen or didn't it? It's a story that's inspired documentaries, books, movies, and even art, weaving itself into the fabric of our cultural fascination with the unexplained. Over the years, the Phoenix Lights have been the subject of countless documentaries, from investigative pieces on the History Channel to in-depth explorations by UFO researchers. Filmmakers have recreated the event with eerie accuracy, using eyewitness testimonies and archival footage to immerse viewers in what it might have been like to stand under that massive, silent craft. If you've ever watched one of those shows and found yourself looking nervously out the window afterward, you're not alone. And let's not forget the books, dozens of them with titles like The Phoenix Lights, A Skeptic's Discovery That We Are Not Alone. Subtle, right? These books dive into everything from eyewitness accounts to government conspiracies, each adding another layer to the story. Even fictional works have drawn inspiration from the Phoenix Lights, using the event as a backdrop for tales of alien encounters and hidden truths. It's almost as if the lights have become a genre all their own. But the Phoenix Lights don't exist in a vacuum. They're part of a much larger tapestry of UFO sightings that have captivated people for generations. Think about Roswell in 1947, when reports of a crashed flying saucer in New Mexico set off decades of speculation and conspiracy theories. Or the Rendlesham Forest incident in 1980, often called Britain's Roswell, where military personnel reported strange lights and a possible craft landing in the woods. Like the Phoenix Lights, these events share a common thread. They leave us with more questions than answers. What sets the Phoenix Lights apart, though, is the sheer number of witnesses. While many famous UFO sightings rely on the testimony of a few individuals, the Phoenix Lights were seen by thousands from different towns, professions, and walks of life. That kind of widespread experience gives the event a weight that's hard to dismiss. It's not just one person's word against the skeptics. It's a chorus of voices, all describing something extraordinary. So why does the story of the Phoenix Lights continue to captivate us even decades later? Part of it is the scale of the event. It wasn't just a fleeting moment, but a phenomenon that unfolded over hours and across multiple states. And then there's the mystery itself. Despite all the investigations, theories, and explanations, we still don't know exactly what happened that night. That unanswered question, that sense of possibility, keeps the story alive. But it's more than just the mystery. The Phoenix lights tap into something deeply human, our curiosity about the unknown, our hope that there's more to the universe than what we see, and yes, our fear of what might be out there. Whether you're a believer, a skeptic, or somewhere in between, the Phoenix lights invite you to imagine, to wonder, and to question. And in a world where so much feels explained and categorized, that's a powerful thing. I think that's why this story endures. It's not just about lights in the sky, it's about the way it makes us feel. The awe, the uncertainty, the thrill of not knowing. Whether you're standing in your backyard, staring up at the stars, or watching a documentary about the event, the Phoenix lights remind us of the vastness of the universe and how little we truly understand about it. From documentaries to debates, from the skies of Phoenix to the corners of the world, the Phoenix lights have left an indelible mark on our culture and our imaginations. They've become more than an event. They're a symbol of the mysteries that still surround us and the questions we're compelled to keep asking. And as long as we keep looking up, the story of the Phoenix lights will continue to shine brightly in the night sky of our collective curiosity. The Phoenix lights leave us with more than just unanswered questions about what happened that night. They leave us with deeper questions about ourselves. There's something profoundly human about the way we react to events like this. Whether you're a believer and a skeptic or somewhere in between, the Phoenix lights tap into something universal. Our curiosity about the unknown. Think about it. Since the dawn of time, we've looked up at the stars and wondered what's out there. We've told stories about gods and monsters, mapped constellations, and sent probes into the vastness of space, all in the hopes of finding something or someone waiting for us. The Phoenix lights remind us that no matter how much we think we know, there's still so much left to discover. And maybe that's what keeps this story alive. It's not just about the lights themselves, it's about the thrill of the mystery, the possibility that we don't have all the answers yet. I mean, let's be honest, part of the appeal is the excitement, right? It's fun to imagine that those lights were alien visitors, silently observing us from above. Maybe they were just passing through like cosmic tourists, taking in the sights before moving on to their next destination. And if they were, well, I hope they liked what they saw. Hopefully. They didn't just think, oh no, not these people. But on a more serious note, if the lights really were extraterrestrial, what does that mean for us? It's one of those questions that's as thrilling as it is humbling. For centuries, we've thought of ourselves as the center of the universe. If we're not alone, if there's intelligent life out there, it forces us to rethink our place in the grand scheme of things. Are we just one of many civilizations scattered across the stars? What would it mean to connect with beings who've evolved in completely different ways? And then there's the practical side of it. If aliens were here, what were they doing? Were they studying us or trying to understand how we live, or simply passing by? Did they look down at us and see a species worth engaging with, or one they'd rather avoid? It's humbling, isn't it, to think about how we might appear from the perspective of an outsider? What would we want them to know about us, our creativity, our resilience? Or would they just be left scratching their heads at our obsession with reality TV? Whatever the answer, the Phoenix lights give us a chance to reflect on who we are and what we aspire to be. Whether they were extraterrestrial or something closer to home, they remind us of the vastness of the universe and our small but significant place within it. They invite us to keep asking questions, to keep exploring, and to never stop looking up. Because sometimes the greatest discoveries come from the moments when we let ourselves wonder. So, what do you think? What if the lights were alien visitors? What would that mean for humanity and for you personally? Would it make you feel smaller? Or would it make you feel connected to something larger than yourself? I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. Maybe you've got your own theories, or maybe you've experienced something similar. Either way, the Phoenix Lights remind us that the mysteries of the universe are far from solved, and that's a beautiful thing. And so, we find ourselves at the end of this journey through the mystery of the Phoenix Lights. Tonight we've retraced the events of March 13th, 1997, following those silent, glowing lights as they moved across the Southwest, captivating thousands. We've heard the vivid eyewitness accounts, explored the theories, ranging from extraterrestrial visitors to military flares, and reflected on the deeper questions this event inspires about ourselves and our place in the universe. What makes the Phoenix Lights so enduring isn't just the event itself, though that's extraordinary enough. It's the way it brought people together, sparking curiosity, debate, and even a little awe. It reminds us of something universal, our need to ask questions, to wonder, and to explore the unknown. Whether you're a firm believer, a hardened skeptic, or somewhere in between, the Phoenix Lights give us something we can all connect with, a mystery that refuses to be easily explained. I want to thank you for joining me tonight on Legends and Lore. This podcast is about more than just telling stories. It's about sharing mysteries that make us think, reflect, and sometimes even laugh at ourselves along the way. If you have your own theories about the Phoenix Lights, I'd love to hear them. Maybe you've got an explanation I haven't considered, or maybe you just want to say, "It's totally aliens, David." Either way, feel free to reach out. Your insights and curiosity are what make this podcast what it is. Now, if the Phoenix Lights weren't enough to keep you up at night, let me tell you about next week's episode. We're diving into one of the creepiest modern urban legends, the Black-Eyed Kids. These pale, unsettling children knock on doors, asking to come in, and if the stories are true, you really don't want to let them. Are they ghosts, vampires, aliens, or something else entirely? We'll dig into the origins of this chilling phenomenon, the stories that keep people talking, and the theories that might just send a shiver down your spine. Until then, keep looking up, keep asking questions, and remember, sometimes the most fascinating mysteries aren't just out there in the universe. They're right here, waiting for us to notice them. This has been Legends and Lore, and I'm your host, David Culpepper. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you next time.